The Commanders. The Commanders. This will never not be funny. Until the Commanders win a championship, they will always deserve to be mocked and ridiculed for coming up with the name of the Commanders and their color scheme. Oh, God. Really, honestly, would you expect anything less from an organization that is ultimately led by Daniel Snyder? I mean, seriously. There's so many other cool names, so many other cool options you probably could have come up with. And you went with Commanders. We're the Commanders. You got the Giants, you got the Eagles, you got the Cowboys, and the Commanders. I mean, admittedly, let's be honest here, folks. If you're talking about this name, this feels much more like an XFL or USFL type of name than it does an NFL name. Let's be real. But all joking aside, what was less funny was apparently Ron Rivera, the leadership in the front office of the Commanders, didn't take note of the fact that the Eagles couldn't wait to get rid of Carson Wentz soon after giving him a massive contract. The Indianapolis Colts gave up quite a bit to bring in said Carson Wentz, and after 1 year, we're ready to move off of him, sitting there and saying to themselves, gee, you know what? That means Carson Wentz is our guy, damn it! Really? Carson Wentz? And this is going back to a guy that was huge on Carson Wentz coming out of North Dakota State. In the first couple of his years in the league, there was some reason to feel validated in that. But at some point in time, you have to adapt to the current reality. And it's okay to say, hey, what once was, it's no longer. You keep hoping and waiting for 2017 pre-knee injury Carson Wentz to come back, and that dude's never fucking coming back. Because if he was, the Eagles would have seen it and wouldn't have kept Jalen Hurts instead. If he was ever going to be that, the Colts wouldn't have moved off of him after one season. Those teams did, and they did so for a reason. And this comes back sometimes to that fundamental question that so many teams fail to ask themselves. They get more focused on their own arrogance of bullshit and or desperation, thinking, hey, we get him into our fold, we're going to know better. We bring him here, he's going to be great. Instead of asking the most important key question of all, why? If Carson Wentz was so great, why were the Eagles eager to move off of him? If Carson Wentz was so great and really had that type of ability and capability, why would the Colts be willing to move him one season after giving up quite a bit to get him? Those fundamental questions, like the ones the Broncos should have asked themselves when it came to dealing for Russell Wilson or not. Why would the Seahawks choose a 71-year-old head coach over a 9-time Pro Bowl quarterback in his early 30s? These are the key fundamental questions. And of course, they didn't fucking answer them. And then during the season, you got some distractions when it comes to Dan Snyder. He's still allowed to own the team for some reason. What a fucking mess. And I look at this Commanders team, and I say they're in the worst possible spot. They are literally middle of the pack. Not talented enough to be a contender. Not terrible enough to bottom out and start over. Worst of all, absolutely no long-term answer at the quarterback position and no clue about how to find or get that long-term answer at the position. Even when you look at the Commanders' season record, it was 8-1. You can't split the difference any tighter than that. 8-1. So not 9-8, not 8-9. They literally had to go even Steven in all three categories. That's the worst spot to be in right now. And that's where the Commanders live and almost feel destined to continue to live. As you look at their offense, no surprise, Carson Wentz wasn't great. Then they roll with Taylor Heineke for a good portion of the season. And then once Ron Rivera thinks that this team has a chance at the playoffs, he decides to make a dumb dick decision to go back to Carson Wentz because, yeah, that's going to fucking fire up the troops. All to sit there and say, finally, week 18, it's too late, it doesn't matter. So now we're going to sit there and play Sam Howell. If you want a microcosm of this season, how about when the Commanders lost in Week 17, and Ron Rivera didn't realize that if his team lost, that meant they were going to get eliminated from the playoff race. That's pretty bad. Pretty bad. And you could say they wasted a great season for their defense, and they certainly did. Third in yards allowed, seventh in points allowed, all that. And you only got 3 games out of Chase Young, guy that you looked to a couple years ago as a number 2 overall pick. You thought he was going to be a franchise player. He hasn't been right since the injury. Missed so much time now. You're even debating whether or not you're going to pick up the 5th-year option on him. But you have franchise tag Daron Payne. So when you look at this team and you say, what went wrong here? What killed their hopes was late in the year. They had that tie and then 3 straight losses. So that was it. They failed to get it done when they needed to get it done. And worst of all about it, you brought in Carson Wentz because you did not feel Taylor Heinicke was the guy. Carson Wentz early on showed you he wasn't that dude. So in that point, instead of going to Sam Howell to say, let's evaluate him and let's see what he could do in live fire and get a lot of film on him that might help us determine where we're going to be in 2023, and maybe he could do more in 2022, you went to fucking Taylor Heinicke. And then when you were ready to move off of Taylor Heinicke, you went back to Carson Wentz because you just couldn't help but be stubborn. You just couldn't help but be really stupid. And that's what that was. Stupid, stupid, fucking stupid. And now you got the Commanders and some media in the D.C. area talking about, it looks like right now they're ready to roll with Sam Howell as QB1 going into 2023. A guy that played exactly 1 start. He had 1 start. Just criminal, mediocre stupidity by the entire Commanders organization. And you look at them in this offseason, you really going to roll with Sam Howell as QB1? You really want to do that? Now, maybe if the Ravens don't put the exclusive franchise on Lamar Jackson, yeah, you got to go out there. You got to be willing to part with the 2 first-round picks and more if needed. And you go give Lamar Jackson the big goddamn contract because you need something. It's either that or where you're picking at 16, you need to entertain making a huge move up the board to get a quarterback. Because the Commanders are another good example of this is not a talentless team. You look at their defensive line, you've got Jonathan Allen, you've got Daron Payne, you've got Montez Sweat. You've got some talent on the defensive front. And then offensively, you've got a guy like Terry McLaurin. Jahan Dotson had a couple of moments last year. Brian Robinson, showed some nice flashes. And that's from a guy that you were expecting some big things out of as a 3rd-round pick, but then he gets shot in the offseason, and that delays when he can debut. You have some reason to have some confidence in the future, but the shit doesn't matter until you get quarterback right. And this is an organization, to be fair to them, that several times over the past 2 decades has invested a 1st-round pick at the quarterback position, whether that's Patrick Ramsey or Jason Campbell, or Robert Griffin III, Dwayne Haskins. They have tried and have failed. But that doesn't mean that you stop trying. What they have to acknowledge is this Ryan Fitzpatrick shit didn't work out. The Carson Wentz shit didn't work out. Taylor Heinicke, God bless him, high quality backup, not a long-term high-level starter. You know that now. You really want to risk Sam Howell, but maybe you have no other choice. No. You go make a big play for Lamar, or you go make a big play to make a massive move up the board to get a fucking quarterback. Until you do that, you're going nowhere if you're the Washington Commanders. It's about high time they fucking accept that.